He only knew that the boy was cold. He only knew that the boy was cold. He only knew that the coat the boy was wearing was 2 sizes too big and belonged to someone else entirely. Gordon Alcott had been standing outside Rideau Provisions for 4 minutes, trying to remember if he had taken his blood pressure medication that morning, when he noticed the boy. Not because the boy was loud. Not because the boy was doing anything unusual. He noticed him because the boy was so completely still. Most children, even tired ones, fidget. They shift their weight. They look at things. This boy stood near the corner of the building with his back against the brick, and his hands tucked under his arms, and he was watching the street with the kind of attention that Gordon had only ever seen in people who had learned that paying attention was the same thing as staying safe. Gordon picked up his 2 bags from the mat where he had set them down and adjusted his grip. He was 63 years old, and the walk back to his car was 3 blocks, and he had forgotten that paper bags are heavier than they look when you are in a good mood in the produce aisle, but have to carry them in the November cold. He took the first step off the curb, and the bag in his left hand made a sound. A low, papery groan, the kind that comes just before a tear. He stopped. He looked at the bag. He looked up at the street and calculated, without wanting to, that he was not going to make it to the car with this particular bag intact. He was still working through this problem when a voice said, "I can take that one, sir, if you want." Gordon turned around. The boy had come off the wall. He was maybe 10 years old, maybe 11. His sneakers were wet through. His coat, the oversized one, had a broken zipper at the collar that had been held shut with a safety pin. He was looking at the bag the way someone looks at a problem they already know how to solve. "I'm fine," Gordon said, which was not entirely true. "The bottom's going," the boy said. He said it without any drama, just a fact. "You can see it from here." Gordon looked down. The boy was right. "Where are you headed?" the boy asked. "Parking lot on Daly. That's not far. I know a way to hold the bottom so it doesn't go. My mom taught me." He paused. "She used to work at a grocery store." Gordon stood there for a moment. The wind came off the canal and pushed a few dead leaves across the sidewalk between them. "What's your name?" Gordon asked. "Felix," the boy said. "I'm Gordon." He handed over the bad bag. "And I'd appreciate that." Felix accepted the bag with both hands, repositioned it against his chest so the weight was distributed differently, and started walking. He seemed to know which direction without being told. They walked half a block before Gordon said anything else. "No school today?" "It's 4 o'clock, Felix said. Gordon had lost track of the afternoon. He sometimes did on days when the office felt smaller than it was. "Of course it is," he said. Felix glanced up at him. He had dark eyes that took things in quickly, the way children do when they are used to reading rooms. "Do you work around here?" "I did this morning. I'm an arbitration lawyer. I was meeting a client near the market, and I stopped in." He paused. "I usually don't carry my own groceries. Do you have someone who does that?" "Usually." Felix seemed to consider this without judgment. "My mom does all our groceries, but she works nights now, so she shops in the morning when the store is quiet. She says it's easier that way. That's smart. She's pretty smart." They walked in silence for a moment. A bus went by and threw a small wave of water from the gutter, and Felix stepped back from it without breaking stride, as if he had learned exactly how far to stand from the curb in wet weather. "Do you live nearby?" Gordon asked. "Kind of," Felix said. "We're at the shelter on Murray right now. We've been there since September." He said it the same way he had said everything else. Not ashamed, not performing bravery, just saying the truth because he had been asked a direct question and saw no reason to give an indirect answer. Gordon didn't say anything right away. He had learned, over decades of sitting across tables from people in difficult circumstances, that sometimes the most respectful thing you can do is to let a true thing sit where it lands without rushing to cover it with sympathy. "Is your mother expecting you for supper?" he asked instead. "She leaves at 10, so I'll see her before that." He adjusted the bag slightly. "She always makes sure there's something left for me even on work nights. She puts it in the little fridge by my bed." "What's in the fridge tonight?" Felix thought about it. "Probably the soup she made Sunday. She makes a big pot on Sundays, turkey and rice. It lasts a while. That sounds like a good soup." "It is," Felix said with complete sincerity. "She puts dill in it. I didn't used to like dill. Now I do." They reached the parking lot. Gordon's car was near the back. A black Volvo that looked exactly like the cars of people who had stopped thinking about cars because they had other things to think about. He led Felix to it and unlocked the trunk. "You can set it here," he said. Felix placed the bag down carefully, adjusting it so it would sit flat. He stood back and looked at it with the quiet satisfaction of someone who had done a thing properly. "The bottom held," he said. "It did," Gordon agreed. "You were right about your mother." Felix put his hands back under his arms. His breath made small clouds in the cold air. He looked like he was about to say goodbye and go back the way he had come, back to Murray Street. Back to the shelter, back to the small fridge and the Sunday soup. Gordon reached into his coat pocket and found his wallet. "I'd like to give you something for." "That's all right," Felix said. He said it quickly, but not rudely. "I didn't do it for that." Gordon stopped. He looked at the boy. "No, you didn't," he said. "That's exactly why I offered." Felix shook his head, but he was looking at the ground now, rather than at Gordon. His jaw was set in the way of someone who has made a decision and intends to keep it. Gordon put the wallet back. "Can I at least buy you a coffee? Or a hot chocolate? There's a place across the—" "I have to get back," Felix said. "My mom worries if I'm not there when she's leaving." Gordon nodded. He did not push. "All right then, Felix," he said. "Thank you. You saved me a problem today." Felix looked up. The set of his jaw eased slightly. "It wasn't a big problem." "No," Gordon said, "but you solved it." Felix almost smiled. Then he turned and walked back out of the parking lot, his too big coat moving around his small frame, his wet sneakers quiet on the pavement. Gordon stood by the open trunk and watched him go. He didn't know why he stayed there as long as he did. He was a man who moved efficiently. He had built an entire professional life around the efficient movement from problem to resolution. But he stood there until Felix turned the corner and was gone. And then he stood there a moment longer. There was a peppermint candy on the floor of the trunk. It must have rolled out of one of the bags. He picked it up and held it in his palm and then put it in his pocket. He did not know why he did that either. He thought about it on the drive home, through the slow lights on King Edward, past the park where the leaves had come down and been left where they fell. He thought about a boy who knew how to hold a paper bag so the bottom didn't give way. He thought about Sunday soup with dill. He thought about a woman who worked nights and still left supper in a small fridge by her son's bed. He thought about what it meant to do something without expecting anything back, and to mean it. And to be 10 years old while you were doing it. By the time he reached his house in the Glebe, he had thought about very little else. His office was on Metcalf Street on the 7th floor of Good Bones and modern enough to have poor light. Gordon Alcott had occupied the same corner office for 19 years. He knew which drawer stuck in the cold, and which window latch needed to be lifted and pushed at the same time, and which clank chair was comfortable, and which one was subtly lower than the others. And he had learned long ago to steer certain clients toward the lower chair. He was not a sentimental man by reputation. His colleagues described him with words like meticulous and unflappable and occasionally difficult in the way that thorough people can be. He had won cases that should not have been winnable. He had also, over the years, done small things that nobody ever wrote about, paid the articling fees for 2 students from families who couldn't manage it, quietly restructured a settlement so that a single mother kept her house when she wouldn't have otherwise, driven 40 minutes out of his way on a Tuesday night to bring files to a junior associate who was sick and frightened and too proud to say so. He did not speak about these things because they did not seem like things worth speaking about. But Felix stayed with him. He told himself it was nothing. The way you tell yourself a song that's stuck in your head is nothing. He told himself he had met many people in difficult circumstances. He had. He told himself that one kind act from a child at a grocery store did not constitute a relationship or an obligation. It did not. And then on Thursday morning he put on his coat and walked 4 blocks out of his way to Murray Street and stood outside the shelter for a moment with his hands in his pockets and felt, with some precision, like an idiot. He went in anyway. The woman at the front desk looked at him the way people look at a man in a good coat walking into a place where good coats are uncommon. "I'm looking for a boy named Felix," Gordon said. "He helped me carry groceries on Tuesday. I wanted to make sure he was." He stopped. He wasn't sure how to finish the sentence. "I wanted to follow up," he said, which sounded more like himself. The woman, her name tag said Irene, looked at him for a long moment. Then she said, "Felix is at school. His mother is sleeping. She works nights." "Yes," he told me. Irene studied him. "Why don't you sit down," she said, "and tell me what you actually want?" It was not said unkindly. It was said the way a person speaks when they have learned to cut through the parts of conversations that don't move things forward. Gordon sat down, he explained. The parking lot, the bag, the boy who had refused money without being asked to, the walk back, the way Felix had talked about his mother's soup. Irene listened without interrupting. When he was finished, she said, "His name is Felix Bouchard. His mother is Catherine. She's been here since September. She lost her job in August. She was a shift supervisor at a food distributor. Good position. The company restructured. She's working 2 part-time jobs now and she's on 3 waiting lists for subsidized housing, but the lists are long." "I know the lists are long," Gordon said. He had done enough housing law years ago to know. "Felix is a good kid," Irene said. "He reads everything he can find. He helps with the little ones on the weekends. He doesn't complain." She paused. "Neither does his mother." Gordon turned his hat over in his hands. He had not done that in years. He put it back on his knee. Is there anything they need, he said. Irene looked at him. Everybody here needs something, Mr. Alcott? Mr. Alcott. The question is what kind of help you're thinking about. I'm not certain yet, he said. That's why I came here before I decided. She seemed to appreciate that. She nodded slowly. Come back on Saturday morning, she said. Felix is usually in the common room by 9. If he wants to talk to you, he will. If he doesn't, that's his right. Of course, Gordon said. He stood up, put on his hat, and thanked her. He was almost to the door when Irene said, He told me about you, by the way. Gordon turned. He said a man let him carry his groceries and didn't make it weird, she said. That's what he said. He said the man didn't make it weird. Gordon thought about this all the way back to the office. He thought it might be the best professional review he had ever received. Saturday morning was colder. The canal had that flat gray look it got in November, the surface dull and patient, waiting for the ice it knew was coming. Gordon drove instead of walking, which felt slightly cowardly but saved 20 minutes. He was in the common room by 9:10. Felix was at a table near the window, with a library book open in front of him and a bowl of cereal to his left. He looked up when Gordon came in, and the expression on his face was the specific expression of a child who is not surprised but is waiting to see what will happen next. You came back, Felix said. I did, Gordon said. Is that all right? Felix considered it. Then he pulled out the chair across from him with his foot and left it there, which Gordon interpreted correctly as an invitation. He sat. What are you reading? He asked. Felix turned the book so he could see the cover. It was a book about the Arctic, Inuit navigation, reading weather by the color of the ice, finding direction by wind and stars. It was not a children's book. Where did you get this? Gordon asked. Library. The one on Metcalf. The librarian there, Mr. Arsenault. He holds books for me when he thinks I'd like them. Felix turned it back. I go every Tuesday and Thursday after school. And do you always like the books he picks? Mostly, Felix said. Once he picked one that was just about accounting. I tried, but it was pretty boring. I've read most of an accounting textbook, Gordon said. It doesn't get better. Felix almost smiled again. He seemed to keep his smiles in reserve, taking them out carefully, not spending them on things that didn't warrant them. They talked for a while. Not about the shelter, not about the waiting lists, not about the bags, under Felix's eyes that spoke to a child sharing a room with other children in a place that was never fully quiet. They talked about the Arctic book. They talked about whether it would be possible to navigate the Ottawa River in winter without a map. And Felix had opinions about this that were more detailed than Gordon had expected. They talked about what arbitration actually was, which Felix wanted to know because he had looked up the word after Tuesday. It's when two sides can't agree. Gordon said, and instead of going to court, they bring someone neutral to help them work it out. Do they always work it out? Not always. But more often than people expect. Felix thought about this. What happens when they don't? Then someone makes a decision for them. That's my job sometimes, to be the person who decides. Do you always get it right? No, Gordon said, but I try to be fair, and I try to listen long enough that when I'm wrong, it's not because I didn't hear both sides. Felix nodded as though this was an acceptable answer. It was one of the more demanding approvals Gordon had earned in recent memory. When Gordon stood to leave, Felix walked him to the door. Will you come back? Felix asked. If you want me to, Gordon said. Felix chewed the inside of his cheek. It was a thinking gesture, the kind a person develops young and keeps forever. My mom's off next Saturday morning. She usually doesn't sleep in. She makes breakfast. I'd like to meet your mother, Gordon said. She might want to check you out, Felix said. She's careful about people. That's a good quality in a mother. She'll probably ask you a lot of questions. I'm a lawyer, Gordon said. I'm used to that. For the first time, Felix smiled fully, without reservation. It lasted only a second, but it was the kind of smile that stays in a room after the person who made it has moved on. Catherine Bouchard was 37 years old and had the posture of someone who had decided, some time ago, that she was not going to be made small by anything that had happened to her. She had her son's dark eyes and his habit of listening first and speaking second. And she made scrambled eggs with herbs from a small pot she kept on the windowsill, and she did not ask Gordon what he wanted before he had even sat down. She asked him about his work. She asked him how long he had been in Ottawa, and whether he had always lived in the glebe, or whether he had come from somewhere else. She asked him about the grocery run on Tuesday, not to embarrass him, but to triangulate his character. Irene had mentioned that some people came to the shelter with checkbooks and good intentions, and an obscure need to be seen doing a kind thing. She was looking to see which kind of person Gordon was. Gordon answered her questions. He told her he had come from Kingston originally. He told her his wife had died 6 years ago of an illness that had been fast and then slow and then fast again, in the way of those things. He told her he had 3 adult children who called on Sundays and visited at Christmas and worried about him in a comfortable, abstract way. He told her that he had been doing fine and had known for several years that fine was not the same thing as living particularly well. He told her about Felix in the bag without editorializing. He said that her son had done something simple and had done it with a quality that was hard to name, and that he had not been able to stop thinking about it. Catherine listened to all of this. She looked at her eggs while he talked, and then she looked at him. "He's been through a hard year," she said. "I know, he doesn't talk about it much. He just—" She stopped. She pushed a piece of egg around the plate. "He just keeps going. He keeps reading and helping the little kids and going to the library. He doesn't let it touch the kind of person he is," No, Gordon said. "He doesn't." She looked up. "What is it you're thinking, Mr. Alcott?" Gordon had thought about this carefully for several days. He had written notes on a legal pad in his careful handwriting, and then crossed most of them out because they were too transactional. He had thought about what it meant to help someone and what it meant to need something, and where those two things could meet without one of them diminishing the other. He said, "I know a school. There's a private school in Westboro, Heron Ridge. They have an academic scholarship that's open to students in grade 6. It covers tuition, books, and they have a program for a small living stipend while the family is in transition. I've been on their board for 11 years. He paused. "I think Felix would be a remarkable candidate, and I would be glad to help with the application, not to pull strings, just to help him put on paper what I already know is there." Catherine was quiet. "I'm also a member of a housing cooperative on Hopewell," Gordon continued. "They have a 2-bedroom coming available in February. The co-op model means the rent is geared to income. I could put your name forward. I can't promise an outcome, but I can promise the consideration would be serious." Catherine looked at the windowsill pot of herbs, the small green fact of something she had kept alive in a difficult place. "Why?" she said. "Because your son helped me when I didn't ask for it. Because he refused to be paid. Because he told me about your soup with dill." Gordon stopped. He had not planned to say that last part. "Because when I drove home on Tuesday, I realized I had spent the last 6 years being professionally useful and personally absent, and a child standing outside a grocery store in a broken zippered coat reminded me that the two things are not the same." Catherine was quiet for a long moment. "I'm not a charity case," she said. "I know you're not," Gordon said. "I'm not offering charity. I'm offering what I have in the direction of someone who deserves it. There's a difference." She looked at him steadily. "The school application," she said finally. "Tell me about the deadline. End of January. And Felix would have to apply himself? Write the essays himself?" "Yes, I'd only review them. The words would have to be his." She nodded slowly. "He'll want to do it himself anyway. He won't accept anything he didn't earn." "I know," Gordon said. "That's why I came." Felix Bouchard was accepted to Heron Ridge on a full academic scholarship in March. He was the youngest applicant to receive the award that year and one of 2 in the history of the program to score a perfect mark on the written assessment. His essay was about navigation. Specifically, it was about how the Inuit mariners of the Central Arctic could read the color of clouds to determine whether there was ice or open water beneath them, a phenomenon caused by the difference in light reflection between sea and sky. It was about how knowledge, in the right hands, becomes direction. It was not the same as knowing where you are going, but it is the necessary beginning. The admissions committee later said it was one of the strongest essays they had received from any grade. Gordon read it in his office on a Thursday afternoon, when the light through the window was the particular gold of an Ottawa March day, thin and earnest and trying. He read it twice. Then he set it down on his desk and sat with it for a while. Catherine and Felix moved into the Hopewell Co-op. In February, 2 weeks before the Hopewell Co-op in February, the apartment had 2 bedrooms and a kitchens with a south-facing window and room on the sill for the herb pot, which Catherine moved over on the first afternoon. Gordon did not attend the move. He had not been asked to, and he understood that some things needed to happen on their own terms, with only the people they belonged to. He heard about the herb pot later, from Irene, who had helped with the move and who told him about it with the particular smile of a person who has seen many hard things and therefore recognizes a good one when it comes. He visited once in April on a Saturday. Catherine made tea. Felix was at the library with Mr. Arsenault, looking at a new book about tidal navigation. He showed up 20 minutes later with the book under his arm, and a look of focused calm that reminded Gordon, for reasons he couldn't explain, of arriving somewhere after a long drive. They sat at the kitchen table and talked about the school and the essay's subject, and Gordon said the thing about the clouds and the ice and the light reflection was his favorite part. "It's true," Felix said. "You can actually tell." "I believe you," Gordon said. "Have you ever been to the Arctic?" "No," Felix considered this. "You should go," he said. "You're still young enough." Gordon was 63 years old and had not been called young by anyone in some time. He accepted it without correction. When he left that afternoon and walked back to his car through the April cold, he could see the first uncertain hints of green on the trees along Hopewell Avenue. Not leaves yet, just the suggestion of them. The decision, made somewhere inside the branch, that it was time. He had come to the shelter 6 months ago because he couldn't stop thinking about a boy who knew how to hold a paper bag. He was leaving now with something that was harder to name and easier to carry. He never told anyone what he had done. Not his children, not his colleagues, not the people at the board dinner in May where he sat beside the headmaster of Heron Ridge and talked about other things entirely. It was not modesty, exactly. It was something closer to respect. For Catherine, who had asked nothing. For Felix, who had earned everything. For the particular kind of story that doesn't need an audience to be true. The world does not always notice when it gets better. But it gets better nonetheless, one cold afternoon at a time, one person deciding not to look away, one boy holding a torn bag together with both hands and walking forward because he knows the way.